What's up, Tailgaters? My name is Tailgate Nate. Welcome back to my channel. And I'm back, and this is going to be my final week of schedule preview and record predictions. So we're going to kick off the final week with the Ole Miss Rebels. So Ole Miss is a team that I really like this year. They're getting a new head coach in Lane Kiffin. They're also returning their quarterback, John Rice Plumlee, and they are returning wide receiver Elijah Moore, who I feel like could be the next big thing. Elijah Moore is a great young talent, and John Rice Plumlee's got a lot of experience, and those two guys I feel like are going to be able to work really well together. And Ole Miss has got some questions on defense, and their schedule is a bit tricky, but I do feel like the Ole Miss is going to take a step up from this year. I don't think Ole Miss is going to get back to a top 25 team this year. I think we got to give Lane Kiffin a couple more years, but Ole Miss definitely has potential to shock the SEC. So let's go ahead and see if Ole Miss is going to be able to shock the SEC this year, or if Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin's first year is not going to go as planned. All right, here is the schedule for the Ole Miss Rebels. You look down there, their 2019 record was 4-8. They were 4-7 entering the Egg Bowl, and a bad celebration penalty led to a missed extra point, which lost them the Egg Bowl and allowed Mississippi State to become bowl eligible. In Mississippi State, or excuse me, and Ole Miss just did not have a very good season last year, as you can see. And then you'll look up there, their home games are going to be in the Ole Miss pinkish red. Their away games are going to be in the dark blue, and they do have a neutral site game, and as always, that is going to be in black. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at the Ole Miss Rebels schedule. In their first game of the season, it's going to be against the Baylor Bears in NRG Stadium. So I did Baylor a little bit ago, and the game was supposed to be played on Saturday, and since that video came out, it has been moved to Sunday. So it's going to be a Sunday game, a neutral site game in NRG Stadium. And this is going to be a great one to watch. As I said in the Baylor video, Baylor's trending down, but Ole Miss is trending up. And I feel like these two teams match up really well. Baylor and Ole Miss got a lot to replace on the defensive side and got some defensive troubles to figure out. But overall, the offenses really should show out in this game. Charlie Brewer for the Baylor Bears and John Rice Plumlee for the Ole Miss Rebels. It's going to be an absolutely phenomenal game to watch. I absolutely cannot wait to watch this one now that it's going to be on a Sunday. And I got to tell you, I was leaning, I still am leaning towards Baylor to win this game because I feel like Baylor is just overall going to have the better defense, and I feel like they're going to have a better defensive coach, especially in Dave Aranda. Of course, Matt Rhule is gone. Now, while Lane Kiffin is a better overall head coach, I do feel like that while Lane Kiffin is still the better overall head coach, I still feel like that Baylor is the overall more talented team. And I see Baylor being able to win a close one in NRG Stadium. Then a home game against against Southeast Missouri State. The Red Hawks are an FCS team, and Ole Miss should have no trouble with the win here. Then they have a very tough three-game stretch, one of the toughest in the entire nation in Auburn. That's their first game of the stretch. It is a home game, and I feel like Auburn does need to watch out for this one. While I do really like this Auburn team, they have a lot of really good young talent. Their running back might be a little bit of a question because it still is up in the air whether Jarvis Whitlow is going to come back. I know he's in the transfer portal, but we've seen guys come out of the transfer portal and come back before. So it still is up in the air for their running game, but Auburn is still going to be a very, very good team. But Ole Miss, I think, can surprise this game, especially if they end up beating Baylor. They'll beat Southeast Missouri State and get some momentum before this three-game stretch. And I think a win here against Auburn would be big, but I don't think it's going to happen, and I think Ole Miss is going to end up losing this one. Then a road game against the defending national champion LSU Tigers. So I have not talked about LSU in a very long time. They just haven't been on anyone's schedule. But if you guys forgot already, I believe that LSU is still going to be very, very good this year. They're losing so many guys, but they are returning Jamar Chase, the wide receiver, and Derek Stingley, the cornerback, both of which are two of the very best at their respective positions. Their quarterback is probably going to end up being Miles Brennan. It's going to be a I think he's definitely not going to be as good as Joe Burrow, but he is going to be still a very, very decent quarterback. Wide receivers, of course, I just mentioned Jamar Chase. They got a couple other guys that I think can really step it up in the defense. Lost a lot, but Derek Stingley, I think, can boost that defense. And I think LSU is going to be able to get the win here against Ole Miss pretty easily. I just don't see Ole Miss being able to compete with LSU quite yet. And the Tigers will get the win here in this one. Then to finish off this 3-game stretch, it's a home game against the Alabama Crimson Tide. Now, Alabama is the favorite to win the SEC this year for obvious reasons. Mac Jones is probably going to end up being their quarterback or their recruit that they brought in Bryce Young. He possibly could be the quarterback, but I think it'll be Mac Jones. They also are returning some great wide receivers. Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, those two guys are really good. Returning Najee Harris, they're really good. The defense, although it hasn't been as good as it has been in the past, I feel like it's going to take a step up this year. They got some really, really good talent. And I just see Alabama being able to beat Ole Miss on the road. I know I said Ole Miss could surprise teams in the SEC, but I don't think they're going to surprise any of those 3 teams and lost to Alabama. But they should be able to gain some momentum back before the game against Florida. And I think they could be able to beat Vanderbilt. I know it's a road game, but I still feel like Vanderbilt has a long ways to go before they are a solid football team, and they'll be able to get the win there. So then they have to play a home game against Florida. Now, Florida is a team that a lot of other people like in the SEC. Their schedule eases up a lot. And they are one of the favorites to win the SEC East. Very competitive up there with Georgia. And Florida's going to be a good team. They are returning Kyle Trask, and he's got a lot of great talent around him. The defensive line should be one of the better ones in the entire nation as well. I just think that Ole Miss isn't going to be able to keep up with Florida for the entire 4 quarters. I think it'll be close at the half, but Florida will pull away in the second half, and Ole Miss will get handed another loss. So then they have a game against UConn, and UConn is not very good. They just left the American Athletic and should be able to win this game here. So then they get their bye weekend. Obviously, there are better places for a bye week. You would have loved to have it in that 3-game stretch right there with Auburn, LSU, and Alabama, but it is before a big road game against the Texas A&M Aggies. And while I don't think it's going to be much of a pivotal game in the SEC, I just think Ole Miss is going to lose too much coming into this game. I think Ole Miss can surprise Texas A&M, but it is in the Aggies stadium, and Texas A&M is really, really hard to play at home. So I see Texas A&M being able to get the win here, but overall, Ole Miss maybe could play with them for a quarter, but again, like I just said, hard to play in Aggie Stadium. Then a road game against the Arkansas Razorbacks. And I think this is going to be a bigger game than a lot of people think, because Arkansas is getting transfer quarterback Felipe Franks over from Florida, and Arkansas is definitely going to improve this year. But overall, I see Ole Miss being able to win this one as well. I think John Rice Plumlee and Elijah Moore are the big difference makers. Now, I think Felipe Franks is the better quarterback than John Rice Plumlee. Felipe Franks does not have the weapons around him that John Rice Plumlee does here at Ole Miss, and they have a better coaching staff over there at Ole Miss. So I believe that Ole Miss is going to get a big road win here against the Arkansas Razorbacks. Then they get to play Georgia Southern. This one should be a fairly easy one. Georgia Southern was a team that surprised App State last year, and overall is a fairly decent team, but they're just not at the level that Ole Miss is at. And I think Ole Miss, again, has just built some momentum off of that win against Arkansas. They'll be able to win that one pretty easily, as it is a home game as well. Then the final game of the season, the Egg Bowl, always played on Thanksgiving. It's against the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Now, this is a very interesting game because Ole Miss is bringing in a new head coach in Lane Kiffin. Mississippi State is bringing in a new head coach in Mike Leach. KJ Costello going to be the quarterback for Mississippi State in that air raid attack. And then Ole Miss has John Rice Plumlee with Elijah Moore, and Mississippi State's got a lot of weapons. It's going to be a very interesting Egg Bowl to watch. And you thought last year's game was good. I think this game is going to be better, although last year's game was very, very close and came down to a missed extra point. I just feel like this game is going to overall have more hype around it. I think both teams are going to be on the edge of bowl eligibility here, and probably will decide which of these teams gets to go to a bowl game. Now, I think both these teams definitely can make a bowl game, and this game is going to have very, very high stakes. Overall, I could see this one going either way. I think Mississippi State's offense is better because of Mike Leach and the air raid attack and just the guys that they have. They also have one of the better running backs in college football. Not that he'll get used a whole lot, but still one of the better ones in college football. And then with Ole Miss, John Rice Plumlee, I think, is underrated, and Elijah Moore, I think, is also underrated. But the defense there, Ole Miss, should be pretty good this year. Again, like I said, that has some holes, but should be fairly decent. And overall, I expect this game to go back and forth. And I think it is going to come down to whichever team has the ball last is going to be able to put it down there in the end zone and win the game. But it's going to be very, very close. All right, so now with everything being said and considered, for the Ole Miss Rebels, I have them going 6-6. Now, 6-6 for me, I have them making a bowl game. I just see John Rice Plumlee taking it a step up, Elijah Moore taking it a step up, and Lane Kiffin is going to be able to coach this team, maybe not to full glory in year one, but give them a couple years, and I think Ole Miss should be pretty close back to its former self. I think they have 5 guaranteed losses with Auburn, LSU, Alabama, Florida, and Texas A&M. I think they're just far and away better than Ole Miss. But I do think that they will split Baylor and Mississippi State. I think they'll win one and lose one. And I think more than likely they'll beat Mississippi State and lose to Baylor as just the home field advantage part. But 6-6 is where I have them. They don't have a lot of tough games, as they do face a lot of the top teams in the SEC. They also face a lot of the bottom teams in the SEC with Arkansas and Vanderbilt. And the non-conference is pretty darn easy, except for Baylor with Southeast Missouri State, UConn, and Georgia Southern. Well, then you got to play Baylor. And I think if you can get past that one, Ole Miss is going to be a very dangerous team. But overall, have them at 6-6. All right, so now the Ole Miss record range. I take this team's worst case scenario with their best case scenario. That's where I expect this team to be this year. And I have a pretty big range for Ole Miss. I can see them going as worse as 3-9, which is worse than what they did last year. Overall, they do have more talent than what they did last year, but their schedule is harder than it was last year. Again, I think they can get some guaranteed wins at Southeast Missouri State and against UConn. But I think even Georgia Southern has the potential to beat them. I think even Vanderbilt has the potential to beat them because it is a road game, and maybe they can end up I think the absolute worst they do is 3-9. Now, I'm not saying they don't have great, because I've already said they have a lot of great talent on both offense and defense. It's just underrated, just doesn't play up to expectations all the time. And if Lane Kiffin comes in and turns this Ole Miss team on its head and the Ole Miss players just don't know what to do with themselves, could see them going 3-9. But let's move on to their best case scenario, which I think could be 9-3. Like I said, I do think that they have the potential to surprise some teams, and the 2 wins that I think they could get are Texas A&M and maybe Auburn. I don't see them beating LSU, Bama, or Florida. They're just too good of teams for Ole Miss standards. But it's very viable that they can beat Auburn. It's very viable that they can beat Texas A&M. Now, I know Texas A&M is a road game, but Auburn's a home game, and maybe they can surprise people there. I think they can definitely beat Baylor and Mississippi State. And if John Rice Plumlee takes this game up to an entirely new level, Elijah Moore also takes this game up to an entirely new level, Ole Miss can find a pretty good running back, and Lane Kiffin just coaches this team to victory week after week, Ole Miss might return to their former glory sooner than we thought. They definitely have the talent to do so, but the schedule is not very favorable for them. So 9-3, I think, is a bit of a stretch, but it definitely is possible. But my current prediction for the 2020 Ole Miss Rebels is 6-6. All right, that's going to do it for my schedule preview and record prediction for the 2020 Ole Miss Rebels. And if you guys enjoyed, please leave a like. Also consider subscribing if you're brand new to the channel or just enjoy my content. And if you haven't done so already, please do leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the 2020 Ole Miss Rebels. And as always, until next time, remember, play hard, but tailgate harder. I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.